Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, November 19th, 2018. We're here for the purpose of the Committee of the Whole.
Was expected and running away.
We take
from
roll?
Yes. Your town
Oh.
hall.
Great. Clerk Cyprian.
Toludo,
Here.
York, absent, Levin,
Here.
Park,
Here.
Conquest,
Here.
Kennedy, absent, Mulliner,
Here.
Brennan,
Here.
Sabatino,
Here.
Deuter,
Here.
Dunn,
Here.
Peter,
Here.
Palumski,
Here.
Graham,
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
All present, 2 absent. We have a quorum on to agenda item 2. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, on to public comment. Clerk Cyprian, anybody signed up for public comment?
No one signed in, Mayor Moore.
Okay, no one signed up for public comment at this time. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the council on any item they so choose? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, that concludes public comment. On to business before the committee. Review of fiscal year 2019 budget. Couple things. I'll remind council that I prefer to keep these meetings keep them going no later than 10 o'clock. In addition, if things get a little sticky or you want some additional information, I request that you ask staff to put it on the circle back list. City Manager Grabowski, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight we're going to start on page 147, which is the museum. And before I turn the mic over to the gentleman to my right, a couple of comments. So last Thursday, Dave opened a new exhibit at the museum, which he'll tell you a little bit about. And for those who don't know, that was his 1-year anniversary. And I say that because it's hard to believe everything he's achieved in 1 year. This guy still brings more energy to the job than anyone I've ever seen. And so I'm super pleased that he's here tonight. You can see how excited he is to get to it. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Baker, the president of the Heritage Foundation, to start.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Morley, City Manager Grabowski, and City Council members. I am Mike Baker. I'm the president of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Our mission, as many of you may recall, is to act as the fundraising arm of the Elmhurst History Museum. We advocate, educate, and fundraise on the museum and one-room schoolhouse's behalf. Annually, we make a grant to the museum to help it reach its goals and to maximize the impact it makes in the city of Elmhurst. It is important to note that none of this would be possible without a collaboration through the city's budget and the foundation's members and donors. It has been an outstanding year for the foundation. As City Manager Grabowski just mentioned, Dave Oberg celebrated the end of his first year last Thursday. We welcomed him last year, and Dave wasted no time in scheduling to meet with individual board members, attend committee and board meetings, and altogether immersing himself in the understanding of the role the foundation plays for the museum. Dave has developed an excellent relationship with the board and supports our efforts to assist in making an impact on the history in Elmhurst. David has a great energy and a positive attitude about his work, which helps to support the work of the board. Thank you. The museum has continued its run also of can't miss exhibits. Half of the money we grant to the museum each year goes towards exhibits. This year, the shows funded included Freedom, A History of the U.S., which ran until March. The next exhibit, which flew in, was about Snoopy and the Red Baron. This was a world premiere show which brought record numbers of people to the museum. The exhibit was a story of the Red Baron character and how Charles Schulz researched all aspects of World War I to bring authenticity to the comic strips. In June, the museum opened the Chicago Rink Rats exhibit. The opening included a skating rink placed in the parking lot of the museum where the public could strap on some skates and enjoy this long-standing activity. The exhibit traced roller skating back to the glory days of the 1950s through the 1970s. Just last week, the exhibit opened up Hometown Holiday, It's a Wonderful Life in Elmhurst. It's sponsored by Lakeside Bank and features rare collectibles and stories of the movie's actors and actresses. The York Theater, in fact, will be doing a showing of the classic movie on December 15th. The foundation receptions before each exhibit enables members and donors a sneak peek at the exhibit. It's one of the primary ways we can show our appreciation to the supporters of the museum. We are always delighted when members of the city staff attend our receptions and visit our donors and the board, so thank you to those who have participated in our receptions this year. Just last week, we hosted the Chamber of Commerce After Hours event for our members and donors as well, and over 130 people attended and were able to see the exhibit for the first time. The reception enabled us to introduce a new opportunity we created, which gives local businesses a chance to support the museum by sponsoring 1 to 5 exhibits for next year. They will receive social media and exhibit hall exposure, along with promotional material created for the exhibits that they choose to sponsor. It's a great opportunity to partner with the foundation and the museum, and for the public to see local businesses supporting our rich history. If you'll note at your places, there is an exhibit schedule for next year, and this is what the businesses will be going from. So this identifies each and every exhibit scheduled for next year. The support of local businesses helps to supplement the support of the foundation. Each year, the museum presents the foundation with a requested grant amount. This year's request from the museum is higher than last year's, with specific increases allocated towards funding for exhibits in 2019. With 5 scheduled shows last year, we want to demonstrate our support for the museum by extending our grant money as far as we can to support the work Dave is doing with his staff. We partnered with the city this year to lease a microfilm reader for the museum. This helps museum staff, residents, and visitors conduct research using decades of local newspapers and records. The foundation will also continue to provide expanded transportation opportunities for school children to the one-room schoolhouse and the History Museum, and underwrite family-friendly programs and events. The work of the foundation is only possible through the support of the residents of Elmhurst. We hope each of you will join as a member or donor of the foundation. We have a 100% donor rate among our board members, and donations overall were up 4.6% last year. We have now started our annual fund drive and would appreciate it if each of you would donate, as this is crucial to growing the appreciation of the history in Elmhurst. We've had many special events this year. The first was bringing back the vintage baseball game. Many city officials participated with local leaders for this old-style event that was held at Elmhurst College. There was over 150 spectators. As important as the game itself was, the fact that we only had 2 serious injuries was an encouraging sign for our vintage players. Not to mention names, but hopefully the mayors will recover by next year's event. We also held a reception at Wilder Mansion in February. This was a welcome for Dave and a celebration of the 10th anniversary of the foundation. Finally, in September, we held our 4th annual Craft Beer Fest. Board member Kathy Jordan assembled a team which, combined with perfect weather, helped the fest run smoothly. The event this year brought in over 600 fest attendees from 43 surrounding communities. There were more than 50 brewers serving over 100 different choices of beer and ciders. We could not have put this event together without Pints, who was the co-sponsor of the event this year. Their staff secured all of the beer vendors to offer a premium experience to all of our guests. In total, we had over 45 local businesses supporting. Our top sponsors were Wintrust Community Bank, Pints, and Lakeside Bank. Each sponsor, though, helped us turn this into a community-wide event. We feel fortunate to have the support and promotion of the City of Elmhurst as well. We are grateful to those who help make it happen and assist as servers. When all the parts come together, as it does every year for this event, it's an example of how great things can happen, and they do. So mark your calendars for September 14th, 2019, and we'll do it again. Next year, in addition to continuing to sponsor the Ruth Strand's poster contest for local school children and the vintage baseball game, we will be having a candidate forum in February for those candidates running for the April election. This is a unique opportunity for candidates to see the museum and learn a bit more about how the museum operates as a city department. We will continue to participate in special days such as Museum Day and Heritage Day at the One Room Schoolhouse. We believe the space and needs analysis that the museum is having done now is a key factor going forward. The museum has done an outstanding job with the space it currently uses, though some of its facilities need repair. We appreciate the opportunity to sit in on meetings and value the opportunity to input going forward. When the report is complete, I hope the City Council gives very careful consideration to the recommendations to better the museum campus. Our board is excited to think about the opportunity to partner with city, business, and granting resources to make more good things happen. Our board is a dynamic, it's an active organization composed of 18 individuals who love history and show support of the museum by volunteering for many of the museum's events in addition to those we coordinate. With the chair's permission, I'd like to just note them in the crowd today, the ones that are here. If you guys could stand up. We have Bob Rasho, John DeVries, Rob Butler as vice president, Kathy Jordan, Mike LaCicero, both past presidents, and Randy Arian. Thank you, guys. Three members of our board this year agreed to serve another 3 years, and they are Darlene Van Meer, Joyce Sloan, and Randy. We welcome new members this year. Kevin O'Keefe, who is known for having business in town and many business contacts on the chamber. George Zapanziak joined our board this year. He's a former two-term alderman of this council. We did say goodbye to three of our members this year, including Dr. Joel Morris, Gene Evans, who served as president on our board and has already joined the Arts Commission, and Margaret Pruder, who has served on historical commissions and boards in this town for 38 years. Thank you for everything that you have done in relationship to the mission of the museum. We remain optimistic and energized to contribute and partner with the city to grow the museum and the one-room schoolhouse. 2019 is shaping up to be an exciting year for the museum. 5 exhibits is an extremely large undertaking for the museum staff. The shows next year will take you into a variety of different worlds, such as railroads, amusement parks, politics, exploring reflections of love and marriage and the power of children. We hope you will again show the same enthusiasm as we have for this gem of Elmhurst. With every vote and decision you make as a council, you are shaping what Elmhurst history will look like for generations to come. Join us in supporting our history, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Well done, Mr. Baker.
Pardon?
Well done.
Thanks, Mike. I have to say, what an absolute privilege it's been this past year to work with you and to work with the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation in partnership with the city of Elmhurst here and the wonderful staff and volunteers at the museum. We've done some pretty great things here this last year. We got a great team. Our attendance is up 40% over 2017, 2016, and 2015, and we still have the last part of November and December to go. So I'm pretty excited. We're on a trajectory to actually set a new attendance record. That's pretty exciting news, I think. Mike talked you through some of the exhibits we did here. We also welcomed Dan Bartlett, our new curator of exhibits, and I'm pleased we were able to consolidate 2 part-time positions and bring Jess Sakia back on board as our full-time educator at the museum. And with the hard work of that staff, we've really done quite a bit. 137 educational programs and events as of the end of October, 17 before we get through the end of November and December. It's going to be pretty exciting. Partnerships with more than 18 community organizations. We piloted a brand new Museum Explorers Camp. And Mike also talked a little bit about our new sponsorship packet. We're trying to get more private sector investment in the museum. I'm going to pass this out very quickly at the end of my presentation, so each of you has one of these. This was a suggestion of Ken Bartel's new approach to sponsorships. We already have 3 sponsors on board. I've got a meeting with the 4th in the next week to 2 weeks, so we're excited about this possibility too, and I really value Ken's counsel too. He's been great at helping me to get hit the ground running really here. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up here. It's unusual that an historian gets to talk about the future. I just want to talk for 1 minute about what 2019 has to hold for us. 5 exhibits between January and December, and you've got a flyer in front of you that gives you the exhibit schedule. These include 2 traveling exhibits, Sign of the Times, the Great American Political Poster, 19th, 20th, and 21st century political posters, and The Power of Children Making a Difference, which tells the stories of Anne Frank, Ruby Bridges, and Ryan White, and how these young people have really faced up to prejudice, fear, and changed the conversations we have as a country. And as a world even. We've got 3 in-house exhibits coming up. We have Heart's Desire, Reflections on Love and Marriage, Worlds of Wonder, a celebration of Chicagoland amusement parks. We're going to use Dispensa's Kitty Kingdom and Kittyland as a jumping off point to talk about the great Chicagoland amusement parks, past and present. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to end the year with a railroad exhibit too, which is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to reprise our successful tour of the Elmhurst Quarry. In 2017, you may remember, we sold out all 520 tickets in 4 hours. That's a pretty popular event. Looking to expand our museum's popular new day camp program into 2 weeks this year as well, and grow that. Looking to pilot a new program aimed at seniors with Alzheimer's and dementia. It's a Reminisce program. Cutting-edge museums are using historic images as memory aids and to provoke meaningful dialogue, and we're excited to join in on that. We're going to stage a Lincoln-Douglas debate here in these chambers. Performers George Buss and Timothy Connors will represent Lincoln and Douglas and take you back in time. That ought to be an awful lot of fun, I think. We're going to do some carnival-themed opening events for Worlds of Wonder. We're going to collaborate with the Northern Illinois Lego Train Club and model railroad enthusiasts for our railroad exhibit. We're going to mark the centennial of Carl Sandburg's arrival to Elmhurst with folk musician Chris Valillo, who's going to sing a lot of the songs that Carl Sandburg collected as part of his American Song Bag. And we are going to have projects to commemorate the sesquicentennial of our community's name change to Elmhurst, and of course celebrate the centennial of the American Legion here in Elmhurst as well. Very, very excited to do that, and catch us on the field again. We're definitely reprising that baseball game. Hope I didn't go too long.
You give a speech like Oscars, and we're going to cut you off. But your enthusiasm is palpable. Appreciate it. 40%. 40% increase in attendance? That is just fantastic. Comments or questions from council? Alderman Levin.
Well, thank you very much. It occurred to me as a department head, a lot of people, you always tell people you're a department head. You're the only department head I know that has a foundation backing him at a budget hearing meeting. I think the police department probably wants one.
Don't give me any idea.
I got to say that, we've worked a little bit more closely because of your affiliation and attendance at the Public Affairs and Safety Committee meetings, but it's been a pleasure to get to know you personally. I don't have any questions about the budget. I just want to say that you've done an outstanding job. When you listed the activities, I thought it was a 10-year plan. I just realized you're talking about the coming year. So congratulations, as I said to you at the recent event. The museum's doing wonderful things. It's bringing a lot of visitors here. It's reaching out in different ways to make our community more appreciative because there are more things that reach out to them. And Mr. Baker, you've done a great job, and your board has too. You've got an outstanding board, so thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Mr. Baker and Mr. Oberg for coming tonight and sharing all of the great information. I enjoyed participating in some of those events over the past year, and I think you're doing great work. I wanted to clarify or ask for a little bit more elaboration. One of you, I can't remember which gentleman, mentioned the sponsorships, but mentioned specifically some of the things that maybe they got with the sponsorship. Could you just go, and I know we'll get that packet, but could you give a little overview of how that new program might work? Sounds very interesting.
So we're taking a slightly different approach to sponsorships than we have in the past. You know, often in the past, you look at a single specific exhibit and you say, well, what sort of business or what sort of organization might want to sponsor that particular exhibit? And instead, what we're doing is we're taking a full year approach to our sponsorship package. So we have a variety of different levels. From the marquee level, that's a $5,000 sponsorship, where that sponsor would actually be recognized in publicity for not one, not two, not three, not four, but all 5 exhibits throughout the year on banners, in the calendar events and newsletters that go out. At the lower levels, they can pick maybe 3. At the next level down, they're going to get recognition for at least 1. But they're going to get recognition within the exhibit hall itself and special invitations to all 5 exhibits, regardless of what level they come in on. We see that as a really good way to build some relationships with our businesses locally, and really to offer some extra benefits, and I think bring some more organizations on board. And you can see the whole suite when I pass this out, but does that give you, okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Alderman Sabatino.
Can you just remind me what the, under account 8023, building improvements, what the $145,000 was budgeted for in 2018?
Page 148, 8020.
Second page, yeah. That's, the money was put aside for 2 particular projects. The first is the space and facilities needs analysis that's being conducted right now with our Prairie Forge group, and then also replacement of the boiler in the education center as well, which was well beyond its last legs.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Alderman Brennan.
Thank you. So 40% increase, I agree, that's in attendance, that's awesome. So is there a correlation between that and increased donations?
Yes, actually, we have seen an uptick in actual on-site donations. We've seen an uptick as well in store sales, particularly with Snoopy and the Red Baron. Boy, everybody loves Charles Schultz for whatever reason. So you definitely do see a little more participation. And I think with the wind at our backs, I think we're going to see a little more sponsorship money coming down the pike going forward, because we're able to show that, well, gosh, people are paying attention and they're coming into the museum as well.
One more question, Mayor.
Absolutely.
So in addition to that, so is it possible for you to track repeat attendance? You know, patrons that come through the door, are you just counting heads?
Actually, what we do, we have an intercept survey right now when people do come into the building, and we've just retooled that, actually, so we do have people fill it out. We keep track of if they're coming from in-town or out-of-town, zip code, who's coming, demographics, age group as well. Not everybody always chooses to fill out the survey. You know, you can't force everybody to do it, but people are pretty good about it, and we're going to be a little more sophisticated now moving forward in how we track that too, so that we're asking some questions as well to find out what do they do after or before they come. Are they shopping at our stores? Are they going to our restaurants? Are they doing other things in town as well? Because I've known, working with the Illinois Association of Museums for quite a long time, that museums are typically economic engines in their community, and that, you know, we're very purposeful about doing a lot of our programs at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock with the idea that you're going to get breakfast, come to the program, or get lunch, or go to dinner afterwards too. So we're going to be tracking that a little more going forward as well, so we can see a little more economic impact data at the end of 2019.
Thank you. You and your team and the foundation do a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I have a handful of questions. One, I want to actually compliment the foundation first and foremost, because I don't know how many years ago now, we put a challenge to them that seemed pretty lofty of raising more dollars, being a bigger participant in the overall budget. And, you know, they've not only done that, but they've overachieved, and not saying to stop, but overachieved of even the goal that we had for them years ago. So kudos for that, and seeing that that's a participation in the exhibits, which having 5 is a good large goal to have in a year, especially the kind of exhibits that I have seen come out of the museum as of the last few years is really good to see. I'll say the same thing, kudos in regards to the increase in attendance, increase in donations. You know, it looks like the wave is getting larger and larger as years go by, which is a great thing, and that's attributed, I think, to the exhibits and the leadership that we have both on the foundation and as you as well, David. The questions, only 2 of them, and one of this might be the space analysis that you're doing currently, but I didn't hear anything spoken about the Education Center. I believe that's what it's still called. Can you speak on how that is being utilized this past year and outside of the analysis that's being done, and how do you foresee it being used in, 2019? And then the other question is if you can touch on school participation in the one-room schoolhouse and how that played in 2018, and what do you see that happening in 2019?
Then you can jump into it. The foundation uses the Ed Center for meetings, receptions, gatherings of any kind, and the facility itself that we have is 2 large rooms that are divided by a wall. It's not an open space. And so from the space and needs analysis as it relates to the foundation, we have been asked some of the things that we might need, and that would be things such as meeting rooms, so that the entire building doesn't have to be opened up for us to use it, a kitchen so that we can host better and nicer receptions. There are some critical building aesthetic things that need to be done in the Ed Center relatively soon, and hopefully they can be done, but hopefully that'll be part of the bigger picture of the space and needs. And then Dave can talk more to the other areas in the one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah, again, the Education Center really, I have to say, it gets used very, very heavily. It's where we're staging our day camps. It's where we're staging events like Beer Fest, too. That's the holding area for everything we do. It's where a lot of the offices are for the museum. It's where a lot of our children's programs are. Our lectures, we just commemorated the centennial of the end of the First World War there with actor R.J. Lindsay just this last Sunday, portraying Charles Dawes, who was the chief purchasing agent for Allied forces during World War I. It gets used for myriad and multiple purposes on a regular basis. Going to the schoolhouse, I got to say, we've seen a huge uptick in participation with local and even area schools now in the one-room schoolhouse. And part of this, again, is a testament to, taking those 2 part-time education support positions, which turned over fairly rapidly because people were always looking for something full-time in the museum field, and being able to bring Jess Sakia back on board as a full-time person to develop relationships with a lot of our teachers. We had 20 programs there in October. Now, that's very typical for March, April, or May, typically, but fall has always been a very quiet period there in the past. And I got to tell you, almost every day we had a different group of school kids out there, and we had a huge block out there with the shared campus with Fisher Farm, who spent half the day with us and half the day over at the farm, too. So it's really performing, and it's really coming into its own now, I would say.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks.
Alderman Plumsky.
Thanks, Mayor. Just quickly, I want to thank staff, the foundation. I think doing an outstanding job, and I appreciate the recognition that the museum is an economic engine, and that your planning takes that into consideration, so I think that's excellent. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think that's it. Fantastic job, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks to every one of you who pitches in.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think any department head wants to follow that, so maybe we just call it a night.
We're going to wrap it up.
Thank you. Kidding aside, though, if I may, on the comments, piggyback on the comments that Alderman Bram and Alderman Levin made regarding the department. As you know, for a number of years, there were some questions about what role the museum plays in the overall city, and it's not very common in municipalities to find a department of a museum. And what Brian Berghager started and cared for a number of years, and the challenges, as Alderman Bram said, that we put to him and we put to the foundation that he moved forward with, and then Dave has really picked up and run with. I couldn't be happier for the way he's done that, the way he's going to measure success into the future as to what the museum brings to the city. It's not uncommon as we go to these events that they host, I'll ask people where they're from, and, you know, they may be from the city, Chicago, somewhere else, and they've said, boy, I've never really been to Elmhurst before, but this is really a great town. So it's all those things together, as you always say, one of the jewels in the crown of Elmhurst. So I too want to thank Dave and the foundation for everything that they've done.
Thanks, guys. Guys and gals, thank you very much.
Now, even more exciting, we're going to turn to motor fuel tax. Page 185. And with that, I'll turn it over to Howard Killian.
Thank you, and what Jim said is not actually a joke. It's the worst spot to be in is after Dave in a staff meeting, so, because your report or anything you have to bring up is never as fun, as exciting, nor can we present it with such enthusiasm as he brings forth to the city. So we'll get to the much drier, boring topics now. So the first one, motor fuel tax, again, page 185. This is the money that the city brings in from the state, our share of the your gasoline taxes. Basically, it pays for some of our street wages, overtime and sick pay, some of our electrical. And the big purchase we have out of here every year is our salt purchase. We did just build, again, our new salt dome, which will hold about 5,300 to 5,500 ton. This year, we are looking to place, because we are starting off the year with a little over 3,000 ton available for us. We are looking to, in this year's purchase, we placed an order for 3,000 tons, which allow us to buy anywhere between 2,400 to 3,900 tons for this coming year. So that's the big purchase in motor fuel tax. So if there's any questions on motor fuel tax.
Questions on the motor fuel tax? Alderman Levin.
Just one, and maybe it was explained here and I missed it, but the salary and wage increase, is that just assigning existing employee salary to this fund as opposed to a different fund?
So as we mentioned, when we were doing general fund public works, we actually reallocated some salaries from the general fund to the MFT fund. So if direct you to page 186. That's the fund balance schedule. So, you know, as I mentioned, we went through Finance Committee and then through the council to come up with a fund balance policy of 15% of revenues. And so you'll see the fund balance dropping in 19 and then in 20 to about 132,000, which is roughly the 15% direction over the 2 years from the committee and the council. So yeah, we adjusted the salaries to get to that point.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Being none, let's move on.
The next item on the agenda is the Stormwater Fund, found on page 261. Again, this is where all of our major projects have been funded over the last several years. This year, the two major projects we are working on, of course, are the Phase 1, which is with the Royal York and Messiah project. We are adding, how many acre feet? 19.4 acre feet with that project. And then we have the Stormwater Phase 2, which is adjacent to the Christ United Church and Jackson School, where we are adding 11.4 acre feet. So those are the two large projects we have going on. When you look at to date what we've completed, rather significantly, we've installed, when these two projects are completed, just a little over 112 acre feet of storage that weren't available to the city, just 3 years ago. And again, that is protecting, or the number of homes that we've helped with this is 353 homes in the community. So, with the funding that the council's been provided to us, we've made significant impact on, all those lives throughout the city. So this year's projects, when you look forward, there's again $500,000 for property buyouts. We do have a new CAB on page 90. You don't need to go back to it, but it's basically we're finding that we have some projects that don't fall into the overall large storm sewer project, but we have little localized flooding that we feel now that we've addressed a lot of the large areas that we need to go back and possibly look at studying and start to address some of these smaller areas of flooding that may be affecting, transportation, such as Palmer Underpass or some of those other items. We do have in there the start or the phase, basically phase 1, start of phase 2 of the Southwest Elmhurst, and that's the stormwater pumping. It looks like the committee put forth that we'll be addressing the Sailor Swain Villette area, so we'll be moving forward with some of the design on that. We've already done, had completed the survey, the topographic survey of the area, so we kind of know which street that, if that's the route we move forward with, which one will be going down. And we're getting close to getting final approval from the county to allow additional pumping, or the next steps to allow the additional pumping into the creek itself. And we also have one other KEB on here, which is the engineering and the engineering for College View and the construction of additional storage at Jackson. If the agreement with the school district moves forward, we do have funds in the budget to start moving forward on those projects. So if you have any questions on stormwater.
Any questions? Alderman Bram.
This is more of a general question, and for whatever reason, at this moment, it popped in my head, and it might be for Director Trozine. Carryovers. Almost at the end of every budget cycle, we talk about carryovers. Is this fund benefiting from any carryovers, or is what the balance showing from last year and proposed for 2019 exactly what it is showing in the budget book? And I guess, just to say, that's a generic question, or general question for all of the different accounts, if you can speak to that, or if we can have a carryover sheet maybe by the next time we do budget.
That's correct. So we're in the process right now of collecting all the carryovers from all the departments for the budget. You're correct in that we have carried over stormwater projects. Those are some of our larger capital projects that sometimes we just can't finish by the end of the year, and that's why we'll carry that over. One example is the land acquisition and stuff. We've carried that over, so our intent would be to carry over that $1.8 million to the $500,000, so the budget would be $2.3 million next year, to give the council some flexibility as far as projects and things like that. So, but yeah, you'll see it. Usually we provide it the same when we're approving the budget that night, when the council's approving the budget, that we'll have a detailed list of all the carryovers.
Okay, so my understanding is that even though the budget line item on page 262 shows the 500,000 as a transfer in, you're saying due to the carryover of 1.8, it's, I don't know, in reality, but essentially a $2.3 amount.
Correct. So the final budget for 2019 for that line item, and then the land acquisition on 264, the 2019 budget, if approved by the council, would be $2.3 million. Staff will be recommending carrying over the $1.8 million, and that'll get rolled into the 500,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you just talk through what the process would be if that $2.3 million that you were just talking about for the buyouts, if we wanted to use that instead for a particular project, would that just be something that comes through committee and to council, or would that be, we'd have to do a budget amendment, or how would we be able to allocate those dollars differently if we decided that's what we wanted to do?
So what we've done in the past is we've had an account for projects and an account for buyouts. And so if it wasn't a project, but we came upon some houses that were consecutive that made sense for us to buy, we would use the $2.3 million, which is in the budget. So at any time, if the Public Works Committee recommends to the council there's some properties that we can purchase, that's where it would come from. Because, just continue, the projects that Director Killian mentioned, where Jackson, we have a piece of property, Jackson School, hopefully, that we can use in partnership with the school district, and same for York High School. So if there was another option out there in a location where we don't have a piece of public property that can be used for storage, this would be an opportunity.
follow-up?
Just a follow-up, and I guess what I have in mind is a project that would not involve buyouts. Then would we be able to use these dollars for a non-buyout related project?
That would be a council decision. We have specifically stuck to these dollars are for buyouts in the past.
I thought that might be the case, and I know we continue to budget an additional $500,000, and I'm going to ask just to put that on a circle back to reevaluate if that's the right spot to leave that money, given our other stormwater expenses.
Okay.
Line 8004.
Alderman Dunn?
Yes, on page 262, under expenditures, we have capital and we have debt service. So I see back in 2016, there was a debt service payment. We are borrowing a lot of money for these projects. There's considerable debt service, so it's not showing up here. Is that coming out of a different part of our budget?
So this, the stormwater, if council recalls, approved a 0.25% home rule sales tax that's designated for the stormwater debt service. So we've issued 2 years ago a $25 million bond issue. The prior year, $4 million was allocated, so roughly about $30 million. Tonight approved a $10 million GO bond where we have most of that designated for stormwater projects. I think Chairman York had mentioned when the committee report went through that there was enough cash flow with the home rule sales tax to at least pay 2, possibly 3 years of the debt service that the council just approved on the new bond issue. After that, I know the Finance Committee, will be taking a look at other funding options for the remaining debt service on the bond issue that was just done. Ultimately, it's a general obligation bond, full faith and credit of the taxpayer. But again, are there other options besides putting on the property taxes?
Alderman Levin?
Thank you. Page 263, line 10103. This new property tax, is this just an allocation of property taxes under the, to the debt service, or is this something?
Correct. So we budgeted as if it would be put on the property taxes, as noted earlier again, that we know we have 2, possibly 3 years. So there's no intent right now that we would be levying for that bond issue right now on the property tax, that it would be paid for through the home rule sales tax collections. You'll see on page 262 that there is a fund balance estimated in 19 of $1.3 million, and then 2020 about $2.1 million. So again, we know we have cash flow in there to pay debt service on the new bond issue. So that would not happen. That was before some of the discussion with the Finance Committee.
But so this is under the existing proposal, the general levy on, I'm not sure how to say this. Is this is this a decision to increase the levy for debt service, or just putting it under here because it's a piece of the?
It was just a budget at this time. When we prepared the budget, we had not had those discussions. So again, I think the intent is that that total bond issue will be abated this year, probably next year, that there's no need to put it on the property taxes.
Okay.
Mr. Levin?
Oh, I'm done, thank you.
Brendan?
Thank you. So bringing up 112 acre feet of, capacity, that's pretty impressive. I understand the initial costs associated with those projects, but is there an ongoing operational cost or maintenance line item, not in this mutual fund, but in our budget someplace? And is it material?
In a few places, in the landscape budget, there's increased dollars for landscape maintenance for mowing, basically mowing and a little bit of landscaping upkeep. on those have come online. And then on a few of the projects, we do have a slight increase in electricity and then future pump maintenance and SCADA support for those items. And that falls under which? That's under, yeah. That's under the utility division.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I want to follow up on Alderman Levin's question and Alderman Dunn's questions. Page 262, property taxes net for 2019 proposed. What I'm understanding is when the budget was written, we were putting part of this, the $665,000 on the property taxes. As we sit here today, is that $665,700 and then the following year, a little bit less, being removed from this budget? And we're only counting on the 0.25% sales tax of the 1.8 for both of those years of 2019 and 2020? Is that accurate?
Yes, I mean, it's a revenue, so it's not like budgeting for the expense side. We have the expense side in the debt service, but yes, those could be zeroed out. That the intent, again, was that it would be out of fund balance, so you can see that $2.1 million that we have in cash flow by 2020 would cover the $6 million, the $665 and the $667, and possibly a part of the third year.
The reason why I'm asking is because then our fund balance for 2019 and 2020 would be less than what's written
Correct.
in the budget now
Correct.
by almost half, at least for 2019. So it would be down to 600,000 or 700,000.
Correct.
And then other finances, I think this is what Director Trozine was speaking about earlier, bond proceeds, that shows the $9.3 million of the bond that we just approved, which would be allocated to this fund.
Correct.
Thanks.
Additional questions? Just a comment before we move on. Couple of things, and I always think it's a bit misleading. Mr. Killian mentioned the number of homes that we protect for that amount of money, and that is true. Those are the number of homes we protect from flooding. But I am of the firm belief that we are protecting the home values of 15,000 homes by doing this. I tell people we are no longer the town that floods, we're the town that addressed flooding. City manager and Howard can attest that we now get inquiries from other communities about how we did it and how we achieved what we're doing. Not saying we're done. The other thing I would say is if you do the math, Mr. Killian mentioned 3 years. In 3 short years, we now have the ability to mitigate for 36.4 million gallons that we didn't have 3 years ago. That's pretty impressive. And just my opportunity to thank staff and council for their commitment and the Public Works Committee for their commitment in getting that done. Let's move on.
Next, we'll move to the Municipal Utility Fund, page 191. This is probably, or undoubtedly, the largest asset that the city owns is all the wastewater treatment plant, our water pumping facilities, all of our underground water mains, our underground sanitary sewers. So it's, and consequently, this is probably some of the largest expenditures that you'll see projected over the next several years moving forward on this to keep it up to date. So if you go to the Municipal Utility Fund, the big projects, again, the big one that we have to thank Paul for moving forward at such a fast pace, of course, was the water meter change-out program. And just, under just over a half a year, changing out the 14,000 to 15,000 meters and getting that project up and running. And, we're first starting to see now how that's working out, so that's moving forward. The other big line item we have, just in that portion of the utility fund, some minor building repairs. That's really the only items that are going up from this year's current budget. And again, that's just the municipal utility fund share of projects that we do down at the garage. A lot of that other is more of your basic, your contractual, the first part under the 510. Your contractual services, a lot of your audit and banking, and some of the basic stuff just to run the debt service and those items. So if there's no questions on that, we can move right to the water production itself.
Questions? Okay, let's move on.
I'm sorry, that was part of the water production I covered. Again, that was the increase, so we'll move right to water distribution. That starts on page 205. A lot of the work here, Paul recently moved forward, and we had an entire model of our water system completed this year, so we can predict fire flows. We can accurately predict water mains where we're having low flows, what ones need to be replaced when, near critical facilities such as schools, near our industries. So what we're looking at this year is an increase in our water main replacement program of $700,000. So that continues to go up with what we've been talking about for years, the need to keep replacing our water mains. And of course, the fruit of that was, again, helping the fire department achieve the ISO 1 ranking, was the status and the operation of our water system itself. Some of the other major items we have in the water distribution this year, it's the second year of our fire hydrant and painting and sandblasting. This coming year, for the third year in a row, we'll be painting the water tower, the north tower, off of Armitage will be repainted this year. If you've noticed, off of St. Charles in 83, that tank was just finished being painted and will going back online very shortly. We do have some additional funds with all the water system in the meter changeout in the 5023 account. That line item is for software is going up $100,000, and that's our support for the Aclara system, the Water Smart system, and the Zone Scan, which are all parts of the actual leak detection. The homeowner is able to tie into the see what their meters are doing. The Zone Scan, again, it scans every night. Mm-hmm. It scans the entire city every night and looks for leaks. And we have found how many have we found leaks? 40. We found 40 leaks so far that have not surfaced, that we've repaired and would not have located if it wasn't for the new system going in. So that's all part of the meter program, to try to recapture as much water as we're purchasing. The last item on there of major increase is 8006 for vehicles. We do have money in there for a van, a new pickup, or a replacement pickup truck, and a six-wheel dump truck. So that's what we have at the end of the water distribution, if there's any questions.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. Line 80-12 on page 206, you talked about increasing the water main replacement program by $700,000 this year, and then next year it's going up to $3 million. I know we've been ramping that up. Just $3 million, are we there, or what are we going to continue to go up to?
And let me add to that as well. If it's a 75-year plan, where are we in the 75 years?
Yeah, currently, we are at about 3.2 million needed to get on a 75-year plan. We are ramping up to that. So next year, we would go up 200,000, and then the 3.2 hopefully the following year. And then as each year goes, we'll be looking at it and seeing what we need to do from there. But we're getting close to the even point of how many we need to do.
So 3.2 is what you think is the
Current.
even point, is your best projection for that now? Thank you.
And 74 more years to go? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I actually don't have a question. I just want to say I personally give Paul a hard time about how much money he spends in our committee, Public Works in general, but I put it on Paul because it seems like anytime we talk about spending money, Paul's the one who speaks to that report. But I want to say that a lot of things, not only stormwater detention, but a lot of good things have been done since Paul has taken over this position. Things that people don't even really realize, and it was already mentioned tonight, but the fire hydrants, being color-coded by the valve covers, so fire department rolls up and they know exactly what they need to use before they even get out of the truck. There's been some hiccups about the whole water meter change out, but as Paul or Howard already stated, 40 leaks that are underground that we wouldn't have detected for days, if not weeks or months, before we continue to lose water, which all of us would share in the cost that we need to pay the DuPage Water Commission for. So I'm not going to sit here and roll off all the projects that he has written a check for, not him personally, but all of us. Tom wrote the check for. But there has been a lot of things done very well. It's a big pill to swallow, but we're moving in the right direction. 75-year plan is a little bit scary. But I'd give kudos to the whole team because it's been hard to actually approve those big requests, but it's showing its benefits today.
The questions? All right, let's keep moving.
Page 209 is the wastewater, the administration portion of the wastewater fund. The major item we have in here that continues, again, this is all of our debt retirement handled by finance. The one main item we have for Public Works, again, besides the building improvements, is we do have our memberships. And the big membership we have that we're increasing about 40,000 this year is our membership in the Salt Creek Work Group. That over the years has helped us kind of hold back some permitting requirements from the EPA. Most recently, the phosphorus, that if we weren't part of this work group and that we didn't have the work group working as well as it is, that requirement probably would have already been in our 5-year permit. But at least being part of this and the work that they've done, it allows us to keep postponing some of those other items that we're moving forward on. So that's one big membership, but it's a very worthwhile membership, that group that we belong to with the city. So that's all we have for wastewater admin.
Alderman Polomsky.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't even know how this fully relates, but are there any implications to Chicago dropping out of the work group?
There was
I mean, for us, will that somehow,
WM, our Metropolitan Sanitary District, did drop out earlier this year. They are in negotiations to come back into the Salt Creek Group. We should have revised numbers in the first quarter, 2019, if they do rejoin up. It'll affect our next year's budget.
okay. Other than that, will it affect, the whole system of how we obtain water? Will it mean an increase somewhere along the way? I just don't know.
Yeah, MWRD is the wastewater side. So they're more of the watershed
Got it.
compared to
Yep.
DuPage Water Commission, which is the water.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay.
Next is the sanitary sewer, maintenance of the sanitary sewers, starting on page 212. And as Alderman Bram pointed out, this is where Paul really starts spending the money over the next couple and probably the next 10 to 15 years in this area. So this is the maintenance of the sanitary sewer system. A lot of these costs, when you look into it under the capital outlay, some of these go back to the consent order, which we're still on schedule to meet everything on time. We do have, again, if you look, there's 3026, we have engineering up $100,000. That has to do with complying with the NPDES permit, looking at our ESOs and monitoring some of those that we have to do as part of that permit. In the 5023 software maintenance, we do have $70,000 increase. Again, that's for our SCADA to keep that system up and running and integrating everything we have. We do have money in the communication systems, 8005, an increase of $133,000 to continue to improve our communication system from all of our remote facilities, our water tanks, our lift stations, and move that forward. And then there is money again for vehicles, replacement vehicles in there. But if you look at some of the major items, we get into the, under the capital outlay, 8013. There's really not an increase in the dollars, but again, that is a $2 million annual budget right now we're looking at, and that's for sewer replacement and lining, which includes the T lining, which we're working on. And then we do have, you know, 2.3 million in for sanitary sewer lift station improvements, which is, again, is something that we've been looking at, but that does drop off next year or into 2020, currently projected. So, you know, again, major improvements to the sanitary system, the lining, in meeting the requirements of the consent order, but we're moving forward on that.
And Mayor, if I can add before questions, as Alderman Brand pointed out, there's a lot of things that city staff does that the council and residents really don't necessarily know about or appreciate. This would be one of them. But most importantly, I want to point out that this weekend we had some serious issues happen at the plant. In fact, on Friday, we had all 3 of our inflow pumps go out. We were in the process of getting our temporary pumps in there, and so Paul and his staff and Howard were there. As soon as that happened, Thursday night into Friday, we had DuPage County help us out, so I really want to say thank you to the folks at DuPage County. They brought some pumps over and some staff to help us out. But all weekend, Paul's staff was there monitoring. We got some temporary pumps in there, which we needed, as the Public Works Committee knows and the council approved earlier. But I really want to say thank you to Paul and his crew, because they were there literally all weekend monitoring these pumps to make sure that the treatment plant worked the way it was supposed to work, and that we kept in the good graces of the IEPA.
On that point, I understand we used our new tank.
Thank you. That was the other point that I wanted to make, that not only we put that 2 million gallon tank in as an overflow for a pump station on the south end of town, it actually came in handy on that Thursday night where we were able to divert flows into the tank and not release them into the creek. Yes.
That's going to be my next question. If we didn't have that tank, we would have just diverted, you folks call it affluence?
I don't think it was effluent at that point.
It was still influent at that point.
Stuff into the creek then? Okay. Thanks for the hard work. Alderman Bram?
Yeah, just a question in regards to the sanitary lining. Just a ballpark on what percentage of the town has been lined? Are we at 50%? Are we at 75%, or somewhere between those numbers, or less than those numbers?
At this time, I couldn't give you a direct number because we started lining back in the 1980s, and some of those have failed, so we're having to go back and redo them. So there is no one number that's going to say we're 50%, 70% done at this time. I mean, I can try to put something together for you. But again, the stuff that we did in the 80s is failing now, and we're having to go back and redo it.
Yeah, I was talking relatively recently. I don't know, the last 10 years, I think. I'm ballparking it when we re-initiated the lining. And if you don't have it now, that's fine. We could take it offline.
It does beg the question, though, because we've had a few demonstrations here in my tenure as an elected official of this slip lining stuff, and they come in with the cross-section and they show you how great it is, and it'll never fail, ever, except if it was done in the 80s. Technology gotten better now, I hope? What kind of failures are we seeing?
Technology has gotten better, there's no doubt about it. The new technology, well, the new stuff we're using is styrene-free, so it's less chemicals that are hazardous to residents, customers, anybody else that's out there that drives by the equipment. But the ability of the liner to actually stick to the inside of the pipe over the decades has greatly improved to give it a longer life jeopardy. I don't know exactly what the life expectancy was in 1980, but I can say right now they're at 50 years on the new liners.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
If we turn to page 216, these are the big ticket items, the wastewater treatment facility, the plant itself. If you look back in the KEBs, and we won't go through them all, but we literally have 14 KEBs listed just for those items. The capital outlay projected for 2019 is a little over $10 million alone for the wastewater treatment plant. And through the discussions, there's been several, we've been going through with loan packages with the EPA, trying to bundle up, instead of applying for each individual loan for these projects, we've been bundling groups together. So as we get them out to bid, we can start working on them, having funding. And one of the items which Paul will be bringing to the committee, the Public Works Committee next Monday night, and then we'll have it available to the full council, is basically where all the loan packages, what projects fall under which loan package, so we can get a good idea, and the council will know kind of where we are when we talk about which loan package. So if you take a look again on this, a lot of this is basically keeping the plant up and running, but also keep it from having failures. We recently opened bids for the underground project, which you had seen tonight as a report. Again, that's putting the new gas lines, water lines, air lines, communication lines underground at the wastewater treatment plant. So if you look at the list of KEBs, we have the engineering for the effluent pump replacements, the engineering, and now the replacement of the effluent or influent pump screw replacements, looking at the belt, electrical distribution system, digester covers, a lab building modification. So there's really a lot of work that continues to move forward, both at the plant and down at the lift stations throughout the city. What else do we have? Oh, but one good thing, and again, Paul did point out, electricity, that line item, we've actually dropped over $100,000 in our costs, so 25% reduction, and that was mainly due to the new blowers, high-efficiency air blowers that power a lot of the systems down there. So, we saw a lot of that was funded with grant money, but we did see a significant reduction in our energy costs out at the treatment plant, so that, as we move forward with more energy-efficient improvements, that definitely helps throughout the system. So I guess the best, instead of going through each individual item, are there any questions that we have on?
One and done.
We were talking about the water main replacements, trying to get on a 75-year cycle. Now, when I was on Public Works, we were sort of, it was suggested that we were behind in our maintenance schedule, and it's a pretty long time frame maintenance cycle for the wastewater treatment plant. Are we still behind? I see our capital outlay on what is it, page 217. It was $6 million, $3 million a year. Now it's up to $10 million a year. So where are we in that catch-up in the wastewater treatment plant?
On the water mains, yes, we are still currently behind, breaking to the break-even point to start the 75-year replacement program. If we wanted to be there this year, I think it was 3.2 million was the number. We chose to go only up to 2.8. So it'll add next year, go to 3.2, and by the time we get there, it may be 3.3. And then we'll be on it going forward with, of course, CPI increases. But hopefully we'll get there in the next few years.
What about for sanitary?
For sanitary, I don't have the exact number on that, because again, we're not replacing it, we're lining it. And
Question was for the wastewater treatment
for
plant.
the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah.
What we did was, for the wastewater treatment plant, was we took the high critical items that had been delayed, moved them forward into the loan. We still have a master plan that's being developed this year that will catch everything else. And by June of 2019, I'll be able to answer that with a 20-year capital program, just like we did for the water side. It's just taking me longer to develop that 20-year plan, because it's much more intensive.
Hopefully it doesn't take 20 years to develop.
And if I can add to that, each year as we run through this, three of us, Tom, Mike Kopp, we sit and we try to spread those costs out as much as we can, smooth them over the years. But inevitably something like a screw pump will fail or a cover on a clarifier or whatever it is, so that we need to readjust each year. And so that's why it may change from year to year as we look at the budget.
But just because we were talking about the funding, a lot of this money's coming, these are IEPA loans, or they're not grants, right?
They are loans.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Toledo?
Thank you. The mention of the saving of electricity got me thinking about the digester. Could you explain a little bit about the role of the digester in our plant, and if there are any contemplation of utilizing a digester to produce electricity in the future and utilize that to help lower or reuse our own electricity, more sustainable types of practices like that? Thank you.
We currently use what's called anaerobic digestion. It creates a type of dirty methane gas that can be cleaned and reused to run generators or pumps, which we do currently at a very small amount compared to what we produce. We have looked at utilizing a bigger system. I just can't find one that's cost effective yet for amount of payback that we would get on a gain to actually do it. We don't produce enough yet to get into the next level where you would actually make it cost benefit. But as every time we look at a project, we are looking for any type of savings or reuse of gas, solar energy, turbines, anything that we can find that will allow us some type of recovery on the usage. So.
Additional questions? Alderman Braham?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Alderman Toledo said. I'm glad that the city's constantly looking at that. I know years ago we talked about the recovery of methane gas, I think, Paul, before you even here. So it's good that we're continuing to reevaluate that and solar, et cetera. And it's good to see that with our remodeling that we're doing at the wastewater treatment plant, that we are gaining some efficiencies in regards to energy efficiencies. As I was sitting here, though, the reason why I wanted to speak up again was I want to kind of take a look and put the circle back on the water main plan to kind of get a little bit more information and to see maybe if we could be a little bit more aggressive starting this year with the water mains in town. So if you could put that on the circle back, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Additional questions?
We bring David Oberg back up to charge us up again.
Bring some happy news or something, right?
Yeah, he could charge up the parking fund.
Actually, we did help out the museum. We did paint their, part of our fire hydrant painting, sandblasting, we were able to paint the sign out front for Dave, so we're just trying to.
Sensing the enthusiasm, Howard.
The next one we have is the parking system fund, found on page 219. Again, this is the fund that basically runs all of our parking lots and our parking garages throughout the downtown. The major items we have in here is we do continue to have some electrical maintenance and supplies increases due to the additional decks. You know, in the last year and a half, we brought on Addison deck and then the Elmhurst 255, one level there. So we continue to have some minor increases in there. With these, again, we rotate the repairs, again, to keep them up in a good condition, where we work on one deck as we're designing or looking at the maintenance for the following year for those decks. Kent, do you have that schedule? Apologize, it's, yeah. Adelaide will be worked on Again, it's minor repairs, which is fortunate because by rotating the decks on a regular schedule, we do keep up before we get to any critical problems that are occurring at these decks. And that's KEB page 86. So we'll be, again, we'll be working on Adelaide, but then we'll doing the initial design and review of Schiller Deck in next year's budget.
Polomsky.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, as an example, the maintenance that we have to do, we had to repaint the lines already at the 255 deck. We actually changed the colors because they were hard to see with the white, so we had to bump them up to yellow to try to distinguish a little bit more in there.
Yes.
That was actually part of my question. I was curious to know how, I'm thinking that falls within maintenance. How often is that done? And I haven't seen 255 since it's been painted, but I noticed and it's been brought to my attention, but also the Addison deck, how often is that done? And is there a need to do different color striping and maybe to evaluate how often that's done?
We do evaluate it. Some of the decks don't need it as much as a street parking would be because, again, in the Han Street, it's not exposed to the sun and the elements as much as it would be out on the top level of the deck. That was more for that we were having problems with the way the lights gave off their brightness. It was very hard to see what was the light and what was the line. So we actually went in and painted them yellow to try to distinguish a little bit there. But we do take a look at it when we do our routine painting, we do our routine maintenance, we do evaluate the stripes to see where we do need to repaint on a regular basis.
Additional questions?
Just one thing we are looking at as the parking committee that we do have. One of the complaints that we're receiving is that people will get into the decks, have to drive all the way up to the top deck before they realize there's no spaces available. At Addison, to go up and down, believe it or not, is a 1 mile trip. If you go up every ramp to every level and then back down, that's 1 mile. So we are looking at some technologies that some of the areas that are looking for the signs out front, which will tell the customer how many spaces are available in the lot, or on which level they're available before they actually start to drive in. Because we do get people, you go to one deck, you drive up and down 6 floors, it's filled. You go to the next deck, you drive 7 floors, it's filled. So we're going to try to get it so as you drive up to the deck, you'll be able to see what available spots. So we're looking at that technology. And we're looking at how that can tie to our own payment systems and the ticketing systems at the same time with it.
Alderman Honquist.
Yeah, just a question on that. So I know you're talking about the garage. Have we looked at any automation for the streets too as well, kind of coordinating, or are you just looking at the garages right now?
A few of the companies do have technology available that they can pick up, where they do have the street parking, and some of them all the way to an app, where, someone could look on an app and see whether it's street parking. So those are some of the technologies we are reviewing right now.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Additional questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Next, item F, Capital Improvement Fund, pages 160 to 163. Really, this is allocates some of our revenues to our Capital Improvement Fund, 0.25% home rule sales tax, 80% of our income tax, and 20% of our telephone utility tax. Those are the revenue sources. And then on page 163, you can see where the transfers out of the Capital Improvement Fund. We really don't charge true expenditures to this fund versus just transfers. The largest one being to the general fund for quite a few capital expenditures. Utility fund, that was for the earlier mentioned tank that was purchased. I think it was about $9 to $12 million project that the CIF fund is funding, and then debt service on some of the bonds that we've issued. Any questions on capital improvement fund?
Alderman Honquist.
Just one quick question. I see under transfer to the parking system that it's projected not next year, but the following year to almost $1.5 million. What would that be for?
So this was the Addison deck expenditures that the capital improvement fund would fund also. And as the council will recall, that there were 2 years that were allocated out of the TIF 1 fund to pay the debt service. So that's why you're seeing the zeros for those 2 years.
Thank you.
Questions? Bram? Thank you. On page 162, 2 items, one of which, and this is, I'm just going to throw it out here, I think the Finance Committee actually might be talking about it in the upcoming months, but the line item 03-00, the utility tax for telephone, I think actually it might have been even in City Manager Grabowski's overall summary of the budget. This continues to go down. And I hate to say, where are we going to make up this revenue? But my generic or general question is, where are we going to make up this revenue? Because this is just going to continue as years go by, approach that 0 number. The other question is, under other income, the rental income. This year is budgeted for $240,000, but we only saw $36,000. What is this line item, and how come we only saw a sliver of the budgeted versus estimated? What page was that, Alderman Bram, that last one? Both on 162. Okay.
So you are correct. You know, the telecommunications revenue does continue to decrease. A lot of that, you know, individual residents are again cutting the cord, especially for landlines. So we continue to see that decrease. There's been no discussion yet on replacing that, but we do keep an eye on it. If the revenues do drop, some of the times we just reduce the expenditures also that we allocate here. On the rental income, that's the 180 West Park building, and the capital improvement fund was the one that, you know, they purchased that building, and that's the rental income that we received from that building. There were some major improvements that were done this year. That's why the revenue dropped off.
So it was displaced?
Additional expenditures that the 180 West Park had to purchase. And so that's why our subsidy that we receive, usually on a monthly basis, that it was not done in 18 because of those additional expenditures, building improvements that were necessary.
Thanks. Levin?
Thank you, Mayor. One question I had was about the rental income, but I think, just to follow up, so is this what we reflect here, the net rental after?
After expenditures of the 180 West Park, yes.
Right, and then the other question is on page 161, the fund balance keeps dropping, and I know that in other funds we are concerned about, you know, 3 or 4 times expense, 15% of the revenues, et cetera, but I know this is a capital improvement fund. Is there any concern about fund balance in this kind of fund? Any metric that you look at?
There is concern. You know, we try to leverage all of the dollars that we can. So in the previous years, we've had additional roadway improvements where we would use the funds for street improvements. That may decrease in the upcoming years because I think it was discussed with the new procedures that there may not be as much grant revenue available, but there is some concern.
So is there a metric that's, it's supposed to be X times this, or just supposed to be big?
Unlike the general fund and the MFT fund, we have no policy right now. It's available funds, and what can we afford to
All right, thank you.
Additional questions? Okay.
So I
Time
think that.
check, city manager, just so you
Pardon?
know. Time check, we got about 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Maybe we can get through the TIF funds and call it a night then.
Okay.
So it says that it starts on page 227, but really you can skip to page, where are we? 240, which is expenditures on TIF 3. And the reason why is with TIF 1 and TIF 2 closed out, there's no expenditures, but we do still list them in the budget.
Sorry, did you say we jumped to page 240?
240,
Okay.
expenditures for TIF 3.
Got it.
And so those expenditures this year anticipate improvements to West Avenue, possibly some improvements to the shopping center. Last year, perhaps the year before, we had talked to the developer, or the owner of the shopping center, about the former Kmart building, but we are fortunate that At Home has moved in and is doing very, very well there. But we continue to talk to the developer, the owner, about possible improvements to that property. TIF 4 expenditures. That is page 245. And in those, we have expenditures related to installation of sidewalks in the North York corridor and possible improvements to the I-290 interchange at York. Also, the new facade renovation program that was recently approved.
Questions on TIF 4? Okay.
Moving forward on TIF 5, page 252. Again, the facade renovation program in there, and any developer incentives that we see in the corridor. We continue to work on a number of the Lake Street frontage properties, talking to developers as we move through that. And then last is TIF 6, which is the new downtown TIF. That, of course, in its infancy, but we look at the facade program, always any possible partnerships with property owners or developers as they come in, and looking at generally on a pay-as-you-go basis. So those can't necessarily be accounted for now, but always looking for opportunities in that area. And then, of course, the big question mark is, if we strike a deal with the district, the school district, is it possible that we move funds from former TIF 1 to TIF 4 to the downtown TIF, as was contemplated in a version of that agreement?
Okay. Any TIF questions? I think that's it, Mr. Grabowski. I think we're going to hold you to your word. Nice try. When I don't get one question on TIF, I know we need to maybe recharge. Maybe Mr. Oberg should have presented at the end. Okay, it's about 10 till. Any other questions for staff before we get started? Jim, when are we back here?
We are back here in a week.
Fantastic.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Alderman Bram.
Could I just make a request to, before next meeting, next week, get a list of what circle back items we currently have to date? If that could be added to board docs, that would be appreciated.
Circle back on the circle backs.
Pending list of circle backs. Not necessarily the full-blown, filled-out circle back, but what's pending at least, right, Alderman Bram?
Correct, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Bram. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.